Broadcasting from the Business RadioX studio in Houston, Texas, it's time for Regions Business Radio Houston. Regions Business Radio Houston is presented by Regions Bank. Brave the beginning. Member FDIC.
Welcome to Regions Business Radio Houston, presented by Regions Bank, member of the FDIC. I'm your host, John Stacy, Market Executive and Head of Regions' Houston Commercial Banking Team. We are broadcasting live from our Business RadioX studio inside the Royal Sonesta Hotel in the Galleria. We have some great guests here today from the SBA, Jeremy Foreman, from Regions Bank, Chad Cargile, Commercial Bank Leader, and then an SBA banker within Regions Bank, David Velez. Let's just dive into this. The SBA has just been such a great partnership and relationship between the SBA and Regions Bank. Chad, David, share with our listeners how Regions is approaching the SBA opportunities in Houston.
At Regions, we understand that SBA can be intimidating and confusing. Most clients we talk to have never heard of an SBA loan, well, at least until the PPP loans came out during the pandemic. So, John, our approach at Regions is to demystify the process with our clients. So what do I mean by that? Well, we have a team of dedicated professionals that work to help our clients navigate the process. For example, in Houston, when our commercial bankers recognize an SBA solution for a client, they bring in their SBA banking partner to work directly with their clients to walk them through the process. Also, we have an in-house team of credit underwriters that work on our SBA opportunities, which give our clients the confidence that we can execute and get their deals done as quickly and efficiently as possible. Additionally, we are a preferred lender, which simply means that we underwrite our SBA deals and therefore do not have to send it out for a second underwriting through the SBA, which speeds up the process. Lastly, aside from being preferred lenders, we don't sell our loans. We service our clients, which allows us to provide client additional service and value. One thing we learned through the PPP is that relationships matter. And at Regions, we consider ourselves, John, the relationship bank.
Well, Chad, that's a great point. Regions does consider ourselves a relationship bank. It's important to us to have strong relationships with our clients and then certainly any business partners that we may have. And you mentioned the in-house expertise that we have with an SBA banker, and we're just so fortunate to have David Velez here with us today, who is one of those dedicated SBA bankers from Regions Bank. David, share with our audience today how you work with SBA clients in the Houston market.
Thank you, John. Did somebody ever tell you that you look like Kevin Costner, character on Yellowstone?
I have not been told that.
Well, Chad is right. SBA can be intimidating. At Regions, we believe that our clients deserve to have the best advice and guidance around SBA we can offer. The first thing is we generally do with our clients is to clear up the confusion or misconception our clients may have about SBA and the process. A simplistic definition of the SBA loan is that the loan provided by the bank that is guaranteed by the U.S. Small Business Administration. The SBA loans are part of a federal program which vary based on your capital needs and the use of funds from a 7A loan to a 504 loan, among others. We also have partnerships with the SBDC, SCORE, Houston Metro, the Port of Houston, and even the local SBA district office to help our underserved communities get access to capital with more information in English and Spanish.
David, you said something there that our listeners today may or may not be familiar with. It almost sounds like flight number 7A, 504. Can you briefly share with our listeners what you mean by those two programs?
Yeah, that's right. Briefly, the 7A is the SBA's most common program. It's typically used for short and long-term working capital, refinance of current business debt, purchase furniture, fixtures, and supplies with a maximum loan amount of $5 million. The SBA 504 product is an economic development program which is used for clients acquiring fixed assets commercial real estate, equipment, and some project-related costs. This product can be used to fund construction projects new or expanding and refinance debt.
Guys, what is a little unknown capability of the SBA?
You know, John, typically 7A and 504 are the two most popular programs through the SBA, and probably a lot of our listeners have heard of that. But I do want to highlight two unknown capabilities through the SBA. The first one is tied to the 504 that have a special designation for manufacturing companies in NEX code 31, 32, and 33, which increased the SBA guarantee to $5.5 million for each eligible project. The $5.5 million limit for each project is not reduced by any other outstanding SBA loan guarantees that the borrower and its affiliates have received through other SBA loan programs. The second one, John, which I'm really excited about, which many of our listeners may not have heard of, is through our 7A program. We also partner with the SBA Office of International Trade to do what's called an export working capital solution, or we also will do an international trade loan.
Chad, I'm so glad you mentioned that. You remember a couple of months ago, you and I were talking about the export working capital program, and I'd asked you at the time, help me understand what that is. And I'm glad you mentioned it now because speaking of the SBA office, we are just so blessed today to have with us Jeremy Foreman, who is from the SBA Office of International Trade. Jeremy, can you share with our audience about the Office of International Trade and exactly kind of what you look for and focus on?
Yes. Within the Office of International Trade, we are a federal agency mandated by Congress. Most small businesses and lenders are familiar with the SBA domestic office, but as Chad mentioned, we have the SBA Office of International Trade, where we're designed and set up. We have programs for small and medium-sized businesses to help them to be competitive in the global market. So with that being said, we want to be able to provide them with the capital that they need to be able to go out and compete and win contracts and gain purchase orders and gain business abroad. And so many lenders are not familiar with our programs and also have reservations on lending to a small business that's going to do business in a different country without being able to mitigate their risk. And so we have programs that are set up that will offer a lender like Regions a 90% guarantee on the loan amount to allow that small business to gain the capital they need to go out and fill those purchase orders and grow exports for the United States and for their business.
Chad, David, would you like to add anything to what Jeremy said?
You know, Jeremy has been such a great partner, John, through the SBA. And Jeremy, can you share with the listeners how you partner with financial institutions?
Well, our whole goal with the Office of International Trade is to create awareness around our programs and to find lenders that have that, I would say, the urge to participate in our programs to be able to grow and help small businesses. With the programs that we have, they're in place to be able to, the 90% guarantee to mitigate a lot of that risk. So we want to get the funding over to our small businesses. And so when we look for partners, typically when we talk to small businesses, they many times when they're ready to go with their financials and they have their projections and their business plans in hand, we are looking for lenders that have an appetite and that wants to provide that capital for that small business, because many times that small business they have a certain time frame when they have to produce the product to their buyers. So we need a lender that's going to work through the process quickly, that's committed to working with myself as an export finance manager so that we can all work together to work out on structuring the loan properly, to make sure that we're following the SOP, the standard operating procedures, the correct way, and get the funding over to the small business so that we can move the process forward.
Jeremy, could you share with us what are some of the better industries that this product could be used for, and also give us a little bit more details around the size standard as seen by the SBA?
So in our market here in Houston, which is a great market, we're doing well. Many of the best, well, I'm not going to say the best, many of the markets that we look for is manufacturing. That industry is huge because you're talking about getting purchase orders, they're needing working capital to be able to provide their final product over to their end user. And also the export working capital program is a self-liquidating loan. So when they're borrowing against those purchase orders, the only collateral that's needed is the work in process, which we call the WIP, so that they can, and once their buyer pays them back, the lenders have control accounts set up so that when the money comes in, the lender can take out what's owed to them plus the interest, and the rest rolls over into the borrower's operating account, and the process just continues to repeat itself. And size standard, so our programs are set up for small and medium-sized businesses, as you know. So the way that size standard is determined by the NAICS code. So when you go and file your taxes, you'll see the NAICS code on your taxes, which shows what particular industry or business that you're in. And so it's identified by that. Your size standard is identified by that, and also your total revenue. So we want to make sure that your gross revenues are not over $15 million. And so we look at both of those to determine the size standard.
Good. Before we get too far into this, I know our listeners have heard a couple of words. One is EXIM Bank, and then the other one is Export Working Capital Program. What's the difference between those two?
So EXIM Bank and myself and the SBA, we work very closely together, especially in our market here in Houston. The SBA Export Working Capital Program has a limit. The max dollar amount is only $5 million. And so when you're talking about the borrower needing more than $5 million, then that's when EXIM would come into play. Or when you're talking about the borrower leveraging the Export Working Capital Program and they're doing an asset-based loan and they're looking at borrowing against their receivables or their inventory, which under the Export Working Capital Program, you can borrow up to 90% of your foreign receivables, export foreign receivables, and up to 75% on your inventory. So when you're leveraging that, you can also get with EXIM credit insurance to insure your foreign receivables, to ensure that you'll be paid at the end.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think that clears it up a little bit, at least in my mind, and certainly for our listeners. So thank you for that. Chad and David, let's switch to some success stories. Can you provide our listeners with one or two examples of where you're just really smiling and happy that we've won some business and we've worked with the SBA in a partnership to do so?
Yes, we have several great examples of some loans that we've done, specifically the EWCP. Thank you, Jeremy, for your help on some of these. And so David happened to be the SBA banker on this. So David, why don't you take us through one of the examples where we use the EWCP as a solution, working directly with the SBA Office of International Trade.
The opportunity that we recently closed for the manufacturing client here in the greater Houston area, they have a great relationship with their relationship manager, Greg Pensick, who identified a new purchase order opportunity for a foreign buyer. We were able to engage Jeremy at the Office of International Trade to work the opportunity together. What we provided the client was a $5 million export working capital loan with a 3-year commitment. The Export Working Capital Program works especially well with manufacturing and distribution companies, which we have a lot of in the Houston market, as they have a lot of export activities. Regions Bank did more export working capital loans both by dollar amount and volume of loans in 2021 than any other lender.
That is great. And you mentioned Greg Pensick in there. I think it's important for our listeners to hear that Greg is part of the commercial banking team. You and he partnered together with Jeremy and were able to provide a solution for this particular client. So smiling with that one. Thank you for that example. Do we have an example of a 504?
So we do, John. We've got a great example of the 504 using that solution. David was the SBA officer on that one as well. Why don't you take us through that opportunity?
So in working on this 504 opportunity, we were looking at a structure of a debt refinance with expansion. And what we're looking to do is help this manufacturing company that is currently in a little bit over 60,000 square feet of space. And with everything going on in the world with supply chains, they've really seen a lot of activity and growth here domestically with their business. So they're doing a phase 2 to expand an additional 65,000 square feet of space. So what we're looking to do is refinance the current loan along with providing them the construction costs for the new addition as well as some heavy equipment. The good thing about that, because they are in that NIAX of 31, 32, 33 for manufacturing, we can go up to the $5.5 million per project. And then what we're also doing is including that equipment on a 25-year amortization. And how the 504 program works, it is the bank doing typically 50% of the first loan, a certified development company doing the second portion, typically around 40%, and the borrower having 10% equity injection. Because they've owned the property for a couple of years, they already had built-in equity, so we were able to provide these solutions with the current equity that they had inside their assets, so no cash at closing. And the total request on that was about $13 million. So it's a great success story for a business owner here in the community.
We've talked about a 7A and a 504. Talk to our listeners and share with them what are the purpose of the proceeds of a lot of these? Is acquisition financing, expansion, equipment? What types of loans and the purpose of these loans? What are they being used for?
So within SBA, we're able to do business acquisitions, partner buyouts. They could be buying within an industry or outside of an industry or of a key associate. Business expansions for new locations, equipment, and even tenant finish out. We also provide franchise lending, national or regional, for expansion or expansion and acquisition. It could be used for owner-occupied real estate, for new construction, existing building, refinance, expansion of a new building, tenant improvements, and working capital, whether it's domestic or of a foreign receivable.
Going into kind of the final question of this podcast, I'll ask each of you this question. And just, how have you seen the growth in the level of activity with Regions Bank and SBA partnering and doing different financings, activities, things like that? Jeremy?
Well, I would say I've been with the SBA for 2 years, and when I first came on board, we noticed the commitment that Regions was making. We had a big meeting here in Houston, and you guys committed to the program, and from there we roll out trainings. We did lender trainings to educate and create the awareness about our program. Even committed some Spanish marketing material because we noticed the commitment, and also Spanish Latino community is huge here in Houston area. And so from there, David and many others, Darren and others, Ureni, and we'd all talk and have meetings and about particular opportunities, and from there the relationship just grew. I understood what Regions' appetite was for borrowers, and so when those opportunities arrive, we like to share those opportunities with many lenders in the Houston area that participate in our programs, and just to give the borrower an opportunity to see which is a good fit for them. And so Regions on their own has identified many borrowers as well, and Ureni or David would also always send me an email to see if this particular client would qualify according to the SOP. And so from there, we'd have some joint calls and be able to move the process forward. And so we are noticing that is continuing to pick up with Regions, and that's why they're a number one lender. That's why you guys are number one lender.
David, how about from your perspective? You've been doing this for a number of years, and I know over the last 12 to 15 months, you've just really been busy. So share with our listeners what you're seeing in the level of activity.
Like Chad mentioned earlier, PPP really brought a lot of attention about SBA to the marketplace. And SBA is so much more than just PPP. And sitting here in Houston, Texas, inside the great state of Texas, where we lead the country in export for the last 20 years and have the Port of Houston here locally, it really provides us an advantage. We have so many companies in the distribution and manufacturing space. And what I've learned these last 18 months or so is that SBA has not always been just for small business, but really the middle market company that is in manufacturing and distribution. There's a lot of advantages with partnering up with SBA and the Office of International Trade for export capacity. You know, when banks look at a line of credit in the areas of inventory and account receivable, that foreign buyer typically gets thrown out of the borrowing base. And there is a place for export working capital in the city of Houston. We look forward to continuing to serve our clients in the community.
Chad, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, John, definitely seen a volume increase around the SBA product. And David's right. PPP brought the SBA program to the forefront of our clients and the market. And it really made SBA a lot more approachable, if you will, because all of a sudden they were using SBA, to fund their business, to save their business. And so it's really allowed us to market SBA to a broader market than we have before. So whether it's the 504, 7A, EWCP, or other SBA solutions, we're having an opportunity to provide more of those in the Houston community.
Well, thank you all so much. Special thank you to Jeremy for taking the time out of your schedule. I know that you are busy these days for sure, and I know Chad and David are as well. But a special thank you to each of you. I want to thank our listeners to Regions Business Radio Houston, presented by Regions Bank, member of the FDIC. You can enjoy these episodes anytime by visiting businessradiox.com and selecting the Houston studio, and then click on Regions Business Radio. The program is also available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. Please be sure to subscribe to the program so you don't miss any of these great future episodes. I'm John Stacy, and you've been listening to Regions Business Radio Houston on Business Radio X.